call from the US. Welcome to episode 4 of Communication Matters Initiative. I'm Dr. Asim Agha, and I am excited to be your host for today's session on the art of verbal communication. Elevate your skills to excellence. Uh, Communication plays a vital role in our lives, shaping how we connect, collaborate, and make an impact. So in this session, we will explore some particular ways to enhance our verbal communication skills and take them to the next level. So thank you for being here. I would also like to take a moment and to thank Dr. Amir Lagari for this wonderful initiative. He is a chief cardiology fellow with deep passion for helping and guiding IMGs on their journey to success in the US healthcare system. His experience and dedication to fostering community and sharing valuable insights make him an exceptional leader and a mentor. So, without further delay, I would like to hand over the mic to Dr. Amir Lagari for his opening remarks regarding this session and the initiative. Over to you, Dr. Lagari.
Thank you so much, Asim, for leading this session. Actually, you have been a very important role in this, initiative. So, without further ado, I'll just go over a few slides. I have 10 slides first to give a big picture, and then our keynote speaker, Priya Saha, today, she will dive deep into the interactive session, the second part of it, which is most important. Um, so first of all, I want to thank everyone who joined from all the departments across in Pakistan and here in US. This session is recorded and will be posted later. Um, so, so this is our fourth episode on communication, and the one part of the communication that we want to touch is the verbal communication. There are 10 things that we have to, be very clear when we are communicating. The first part of is clarity, and that is the most important thing. Clarity comes with simplicity. So, like when you're speaking, if you're very clear and simple and brief, that makes your voice very like strengthful. And your speech should not be rushed. That's the another part of the thing that I learned in my last 7 years. The clarity comes with, like if you have a clear action plan on what you're speaking and making it very brief and being very polite and having the same pitch and frequency as the next person is. When you are speaking, the second most important thing is how importantly you are actively listening to other persons. Like that is so important. If you're not understanding what other person is saying, you cannot communicate effectively. You might be just listening for the sake of listening, but you're not like listening to, really format your answer. So it's important that you actively listen. And when you listen, don't try to answer, just try to understand that person. That's another key in communication. That brings us to the third step, which is the non-verbal cues. The nonverbal cues refers to your body postures, like how you talk and how you use your hands and face and body language on whichever phase of your life is. Could it be an interview? Could it be your public speaking? Or could it be your, any online sessions? So these nonverbal cues are very important that translate your energy into the audience from your feeling and impact. When you're speaking with your nonverbal cues and clarity, most important thing is how much you have the respect for your audience and how deeply you connect with the audience. That's brings us to the fourth step, which is empathy, and we'll dive deep into this further down the line. When you're speaking, when have covered like the last four step, the fifth part is like you have to anticipate question, which brings to the point that you have to know your topic. You have to know what you're going to talk about, and you can anticipate questions, and that could be in like a brief, elevator pitch speech, like that. So anticipation is important. The sixth part of communication that we are going to talk about today is like how you can publicly speak really good, with confidence, and how you can bring out that confidence. I can tell that most of us, like who comes from these backgrounds, we don't have that experience. So I would highly suggest to the, all my like students and residents and fellows here, so that whenever you go to Pakistan or you try to, like have like an appearance, try to help people in a larger scale where that will give you much more confidence. And you never know, you can be the leader of that community and a bigger picture. So that's very, very important. That brings us to the adaptability. That's the seventh component of your, communication. It means if you're speaking to a friend, that would be different as compared to you're speaking in a business meeting or in an interview. So you have to adapt your tone and pitch accordingly. That is important to know because that is deeply connected with the emotional intelligence. That is that we had a third episode that you must listen by Saad. That was one of the fantastic episode he did last time on emotional intelligence. That's so important to really connect to the, your audience. I think one of the most important part of the communication is the feedback. Like when we do residency and fellowship, we always get feedback, and especially during residency, when we are speaking, when we come from a different country and then we are speaking, I think like I have received feedback in my first year that I need to improve this, 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 and I was very poor in that, to be honest with you. I will share my vulnerabilities just to help you guys, and then I worked on it, and I really loved it. And by the end of third year, they gave me the best professional award just because I really worked on it and I proved it that I can be best in it. So when someone is telling you that your communication is not that, is excellent or you need an improvement, take it as a positive, but you have to make an action plan to kind of bring your best into it. If you're not like bringing your best, then it means you're not working hard. I think when you are in that development stage, you have to set some like ideals. Like when I try to listen like Barack Obama and other leaders around the world, their speech is so clear. And you have to set your like some ideals in terms of communication. That is your benchmark, and then you set your scale at which scale you are right now, and then you can bring your speech to the next level. The last, I mean, as I said, our episode, that's one of the most important part in communication is the emotional intelligence that you can listen back. And the last thing is storytelling. I cannot like deeply emphasize this, like how important is storytelling. If you don't have a story, create a story. Like everyone, each one of you has a story from your childhood to your, like metrics to your FSC to your into medical school or non-medical school, and then into this stage and then into the future stage. That story would give you like a name and motivation energy. Like I kind of like tell my story and it gives me like a motivation, and I feel like each one of you has a story, you just have to craft it out. So storytelling is the most important part of the communication. And at the end, I'll leave this to Freya over this our next session, which is the interactive part. And with that, these are all the top 10 things. I think we're going to dive deep into this. So I'll hand over the mic to Asim Bax to kind of introduce our keynote speakers to kind of further dive into this session.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lagari, for your insight and your valuable comments. Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor for me to introduce Ms. Faria Sahar. She's a passionate social change maker based in Virginia, USA. She holds a degree in criminal justice from Roanke College. She is a visionary leader behind Seher Sultana organization, which is dedicated to transforming lives in Pakistan through initiatives in education, healthcare, women's judicial rights, and the fight against menstrual poverty. Currently, she is serving as a regional assistant for United States Senate. Ms. Farhia is cultivating the skills necessary to pursue her aspirations of becoming an attorney. and she firmly believes that effective communication is a cornerstone of driving meaningful social change. Through her empathetic dialogue and articulate expressions, she strives to bridge the gaps, foster collaborations, and ignite a brighter tomorrow. So, without further delay, I would like to welcome Ms. Faria Saher, and the mic is yours now.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Aga, for such a sweet introduction. And thank you so much, Dr. Lagari, for this great opportunity. My name is Fariha Sahar, and as Dr. Aga told you all that I'm based in Virginia. I did my undergrad from Roanoke College, and now I'm with the U.S. Senate. I do see that there are 25 participants, which is great. And I understand that, Dr. Aga and Dr. Lagari and me removing us, we have 22 participants right now. So if you guys could just, shoot a text in the chat and just, just tell me your name so I know that we have everyone participating in the session, because I'm going to make sure that it's an interactive session and you all can take something away from it, because that's the goal. And of course, we would appreciate that. So let's start doing that. I have the chat session on my right side here, and then I will introduce like what I do and why is communication so important, verbal and non-verbal. And then I have an amazing opportunity for you all. So we are going to do that. We're going to make this session like pretty interactive. Okay, hi Eliza and Dr. Ibtihaj Khan, Tariq, sorry, Mateen Bhutta. Hello, hello, hello. And who else do we have? All right, guys, put in your names in the chat so that we know that everyone is listening and everybody is present. And then I can put you on spot and I can ask you questions. So be, be alert. Dr. Vakar, hello. Urva Shpag, hi, hi. And SN Nadeem, final year BDS. That's great. That's great. And then Sana, yes. And so I'm not a doctor, just so that you know. I'm not a doctor. But hi, Josefa. Nice to meet you. And who else do we have here? All right, guys, put in your names in the chat. It's very important. You'll understand why it's important. It's important for you, and it's also important for us to know who is here in the session today. And as I said, like we have an amazing opportunity for you at the end as well. Okay. Muhammad Saqib, hello. And Anamta, hi. Sarah Munir, hello. And who else do we have? Okay, so keep on adding your names to the chat, because and I'll keep on reading your names. Aisha Malik is here, Talha is here, Masroor Raza is here, which is great. And one more, Rabia Nomani, right? So that's great. So guys, as I we understand that we're here to understand the importance of communication, and communication, of course, it can be verbal, and then it cannot be effective without non-verbal communication. So we have several ways of understanding, or like several examples like throughout our life, or like if you were going to school at one point and you wanted to explain something to your teacher, that could have put you on the spot where you probably wanted to say something, but then you didn't have that experience, or you didn't have the right words, or whatever it was. You do understand that communication is important. So part of what I do is I'm the regional assistant for the West Central region of Virginia. It's equivalent to how you have commissioners and assistant commissioners in Pakistan. So it's pretty much the same thing where you're, interacting with the state and the local and the federal government, and representatives from the government, and you basically, represent the senator in your region, because the senator, of course, it cannot be everywhere. So I do that, and I also am the immigration and visa caseworker for the senators. So that's where I file inquiries for green cards and visas and all those things, right? So an average day where I go to work at 9 a.m., my work starts off with talking to several people. And so it can be a phone communication, or it can be contacting someone, going in person, or like letting someone, or like helping a constituent who wants to see you in person. So it definitely is a big part of what I do. But then, on top of that, while I represent the senator in the region, I do, deliver speeches on his behalf. I meet with constituents in the region, and I go and talk to them and listen to their complaints, their concerns, and if they have any opinions, then I relay it to the senator. So there's a lot of communication, right? And like even when I'm communicating verbally, I'm using my hands, as you can all notice, and we're going to talk about that. But we want to make sure that we understand as we go through this, that why is this important to you, right? Because as humans, we have this tendency of expressing ourselves through our words and sometimes our actions, but words are important, right? So how to have a effective how to have effective communication is very important, and we're going to talk about that. So as we go through, I would request Dr. Aga to monitor the chat, and like all the participants, if you have any questions, you can like just drop it in the chat, and then as I take a pause, or if we get to a point where I can ask questions, Dr. Aga can quickly go into the chat section, and he can like take questions, and just let me know. So just keep putting in questions or any ideas that you might have, or any memories or anything, any stories that you might have. So you can start typing in the chat section, and I would love to read that or love to answer that for you. So that's just to give you an idea of why maybe I wanted to give this session, or I agreed that okay, we're going to do a session on communication, because that's a very big part of what I do, and it's very important, right? So and there's a huge responsibility as well, because you cannot say something that you're not supposed to say when you're working for a senator, like a US senator. So you have to go through a lot of training sessions, and you have to face the media, and you have to do all those things, and you want to make sure, even when you're talking on the phone with someone, you want to make sure that you're not giving out information that you're not supposed to, or you're just in your best behavior. So all those things combined, even the component of having your best behavior is very important in terms of communication, and that takes time to understand. How does having your being on your best behavior, what does that even mean, right? So I'm going to start off, and and I did not keep PowerPoints intentionally, because I wanted to have this session interactive. So I think that's really important. So that's what we're going to do. You guys need to drop in your whatever questions or ideas you might have in the chat section. So keep on doing that, because I have it on my right side. So we're going to dive into the importance of communication first. It is very important. It's not just spitting out words. It's actually very important, because you as a person, as a doctor, of course, this is going to be a huge part of what you will be doing every day. And that is, you will be communicating your opinions, your ideas, your prescriptions, diagnosis, whatever it is, to people, to your patients, or just the other fellow doctors. So it's very important for you to understand that you cannot convey your message effectively without effective or successful communication skills. You need to have that. And it's not it's not something that you are born with. It's something that you need to practice. When I was in Pakistan, I was a state debater for 3 consecutive years, which meant that I used to do a lot of debates. And as Dr. Lagari mentioned, that you need to have an opportunity where you can actually at least experience public speaking, because it's very important. When you have 200 or 500 or 1,000 people in front of you, you see that whatever you're saying, it might not apply to everyone, but then you're still making a point, and you want to make a point that people can remember. So that's very important, right? That's your entire focus. That's your entire intentions, your desire as well, right? So you need to do that. But why? I mean, why is, again, what's the importance of communication? So the importance of communication, effective communication or good communication, is that when you're relaying your thoughts, you want them to get relayed in a way that that your intentions are, right? If you want somebody to know that they're looking pretty, or if you want to someone to know that you are happy for them, or you want someone to know that you are proud of them, you want to have that set of skills where you can actually deliver that idea and relay that idea in the way that it is meant to be, right? You don't want somebody to misunderstand you, or not able to perceive your thoughts. And then also, like, it's very important, right? I mean, that's like from a personal perspective, that, hey, like, if somebody is telling me that they are happy for me, I want to know that in an effective manner, right? I don't want their expressions or their words to not like not be in sync. So I think that's very important. But I think this was something that one of my mentors told me, that it's very important that when you're in a room and you're sitting at a table and there are a lot of other stakeholders, right? As a woman, I see a lot of different challenges and a lot of different hurdles that a lot of people might not. But I think, like, like from that perspective, but if you're in a room and you're sitting at a table with other stakeholders and you cannot express your ideas and you cannot communicate well, then why are you even sitting at that table? Right? So you need to have that understanding that if you should be confident, you should be articulate, and you should be clear and concise, and, like, your speech should be coherent, that other people can understand and they can remember. They don't have to agree to everything that you say. I mean, that would be cherry on the top, but like, that's something that is of course important, but you do want them to understand and then remember the ideas that you have. So for that, you need to be confident. You need to know that what you're talking about, or what you're saying, or you're about to express, or what you would like to express, that actually makes sense. So in order for other people to understand that, for other people to agree to it, for other people to remember it, you need to know the worth of your speech. So always remember that if you have, like, inshallah, like, whoever is applying for their USMLEs, whoever is applying for their, like, match interviews, observerships, whatever it is, there's several interviews, just your visa interviews. When you're going for these things, and after that, like, if you have a position at a table where you're sitting with other people, just remember that you're there for a reason. And you need to make sure that you're bringing something to the table. But how are you going to do that? You're going to do that through effective communication. You cannot just always write things down and be like, hey, pass the paper around the table. No, that's not how it works. So you need to, like, understand that. And you need to mentally practice that as well. Sometimes what I do is I stand in front of the mirror and I practice what I want to say the next day. Maybe, like, I have to deliver a speech on the senator's behalf, even though I have a written speech in front of me, but I do memorize it, because if you can memorize things that you can memorize, then you should memorize them. But it's not always, like, the case where you have a set speech, or where you have a prepared, or like, a prepared set of, like, paper where you can read it off. So you don't want to do that. You should be able to produce ideas and be confident in what you want to say, right? So with that, it takes us to the next point of, and it's very important, right? I think it's very important to me, because all of us have narcissistic tendencies, which is, like, we think that we're important, and we want to hold that position of being important, whether it's in a room, whether it's at a table, whether it's a group of people, whether it's a single person in our life. We want them to understand that we're important, right? So how to make them listen to you, how to make them understand, or realize that you are important, or whatever you're saying, it has substance, and it is important. Your speech is important. The things that you have to share is important. um, so I guess, like, that just, like, brings us to that point. Dr. Aga, do you have something for me? You're muted.
Sorry. So there was a question from Muhammad Talha. He was saying that how to remember the vocabs, because he says that he always uses simple words while communicating, and he actually forgets many good words during the communication while using the simple words. So there
Yeah,
was a
that's a
good
great
question.
question. Yep. That's a great question. And I think before I dive into the next part, I would like to answer that question. And thank you so much for, like, bringing such an important question to our attention, because it is very important, Dr. Aga. It's just, like, you need to have those words in order to formulate your ideas, right? And without a good vocabulary, you cannot express your ideas as you would like to. And sometimes, like, even though, like, my native language is Urdu, and I'm very fluent in it, and I take 100% pride in that. But I think, like, it's very important, whatever language you're speaking, you should know, like, words in it, and not just basic words, but also, like, advanced words. And I think, like, one of the things that you can do is that you can start watching TED Talks. that are in English. You can change your news channels. You can listen to people, and you can also, while listening to them, what you can do is you can read subtitles. Subtitles. You can turn on captions if you're using YouTube or whatever it is. And I think like that's very important. But then also you should read books. You should read it. Because that's when you basically, like when you're reading a word and you don't know how to pronounce it, you will put an effort into that. You will go to Google and you are going to ask, whatever Siri you have or whatever you have, you're going to ask them how to pronounce this word, and that's going to make it retain into these brain cells. So we that's like the main bit. And then also like what we do in Pakistan specifically is that when we know how to read and we know how to write and we do know how to talk as well, but I think once you are like especially in the US, and you don't always have to be in the US, but once you start talking to people in the same dialect or the same accent or the same like language, that just changes everything, because then you're learning while you're talking and you're expressing while you are like listening. So that's just like something that like puts into that's a good practice, and I think like that would just come naturally. But if you would like to put an extra effort into learning, maybe you'd like people to understand more what you're saying, I guess like then you can just start listening to TED Talks that are in American accent or something like that. And there's no harm. I know like sometimes people like, well, like, oh, like you don't have to learn accents. No, you do. Because you want the other person to understand. You're not showing off or like flexing anything. It's a great thing to learn different accents, different languages, different dialects. It's very important, and it's also like I think it's important to me, but I think it's just also like nice if you can do that, because you're actually like paying attention to that, and also paying respect in a way as well. So if that answers your question, Dr. Talha, I guess that was a question from Dr. Talha, right? So that's great. And I think Dr. Lagari has also answered your question.
There
Right.
is another question from Anamta. She's asking how to be confident in our conversation.
Yeah, practice, Anamta, Dr. Anamta. Like you need to practice as much as you can. And how do you practice that? You talk to people. Sometimes we're naturally, we all, I think, are introverts, right? If we are given two options, like either to just stay in our comfort zones and not talk to anyone, and like go out and about and talk to everyone for 14 hours, I think we all would choose not going out and not talking to anyone, and just like sitting in our comfort zones. But so that makes us naturally introverts, right? But I guess like the more you talk with people, and the more you put yourself out there, the more exposure you try to achieve or gain. I think that's just like that puts you in a position where you have that experience, because we all make mistakes, right? I'm going to share like like a story from my first day of work with the senator. We were at an event and we had a lot of people from the media, right? And they all know, because we're wearing these big badges and like we're fancy and like we're clothed like in suits and all those things, and we're there to represent the senator. So this was my first event ever. And I was representing the senator over there. It was a big event because there was a lot of funding involved, a lot of things. So I was there, and somebody was, and I lacked at small talks. So like those are your soft skills, your small talks, right? If somebody, for example, if I don't know Dr. Aga and I meet him for the first time, and I'm like, hi, how are you? And he's like, I am fine. And then he's like, how are you? And I'm like, I'm okay. And then there's an awkward pause. So guys, believe me, I was like that. I was like, there was an awkward pause. And then my director basically had to take me to the side and be like, you need to, like talk more. And I was like, what do I talk more about? I don't know this person. How am I going to do that? I don't know anything about him. But you need to do that. You need to have those skills. And of course, that does, like you can do it with more confidence. And the more I grew in, excuse me, in my position, the more confident I became. And I think that's just like something that you can do with practice. And for me, it definitely like worked out in a way where the more I did it, the more I understood my audience, and I understood that the things that I knew, for example, like policies about immigration or policies about visas, a lot of people didn't know about that. Constituents didn't know about that. So when I was talking to them, I understood that I am in command of that. I am in charge of this. I am controlling this conversation. So this is very important. Like, when a constituent calls the office and I pick up the phone, I know that I'm in control of that conversation, because they're calling to me for like, to understand if we have any resources for them and all those things. So that just like puts puts you naturally in a position where you're more confident, as you would be in a position where, because if somebody asks me, like, how does appendicitis happen? I have no idea, but I just know that appendicitis exists, right? So I don't know. So maybe if you, Dr. Aga, if you ask me that question, I might not be able to answer that in the most confident way. But if you challenge me to answer that in a confident way, then I might make stories and be like, oh, maybe, the food passes and something like that. But so yeah, and Dr. Ananta, that's like something that comes with practice, but then also you have to do it intentionally. You have to like remind yourself that you want to have more exposure, and hence you're doing this, and that's why you want to like have control over your speech. You have to have those pauses. You have to make sure that your tone is in a way where other people understand you, remember you, or acknowledge your presence, right? So I can if it also depends on the audience, right? If I'm talking to my abba, I think like that's just going to be like different. Then if I'm talking to my friend Dr. Lagari, or like if I'm talking with Dr. Aga, that's going to be different, right? The levels of respect and the tone and the way that you want to express your ideas. Or if I want to speak to my brother, I think that's going to be different. So the different audiences give you different types of confidence, different levels of confidence, and that's how you like you do it with practice. You just need to understand your audience. Like, you understand how you speak to your mom differently maybe than your elder brother, than your younger sister. I think you know that your audience, like that's your audience, and you can talk to them like that, right? So that's how you understand your audience as well. You might not speak to your patients the same way that you might speak to your seniors, right? So the more you have the exposure, the more you understand that, and the more practice you have, you can do it better, and I'm sure you will. And also, one more thing, Dr. Anta, like in terms of like confidence, remember this: nobody cares about anything. So give your best. Like like just be your best. If you can wear, like like if you think that looking good gives you confidence, like for me, if I look good, I get more confidence. So I think, like if I look good, I feel more confident, right? So if you think that things like this work for you, then do those things. But always remember that nobody cares about anything. So don't be like self-conscious. Don't like hold yourself from expressing your ideas, because people, unless you establish your position, unless you establish that you matter, nobody cares about anything. So don't like feel like that people are going to misjudge you, or they're going to make fun of you or anything like that. Just be confident in whatever you say, and to say it out loud. Whoever wants to take it, they will. If they don't want to, then it's okay. No, the world is not going to end.
Before moving to the next question, we would like to encourage every participants, if they want to unmute and ask question from Ms. Faria directly, they are more than welcome. So the next question is how to maintain an eye contact while conversation. And the question is from Josefa.
All right, Dr. Zephyr, that's a great question as well. And after this question, I'm going to go into the points that I have prepared, and then we can open the floor for like, the last like 5 minutes or something, and then people can ask me questions, and then we can drop my LinkedIn ID or like, my email address if you have any other questions. And as I said, we do have a great opportunity at the end. So I'm going to, bring that up as well. But so Dr. Josefa, I think it's very important, because when you feel confident about the things that you're saying, and you're feeling less self-conscious, you can make that eye contact very successfully. But if you're constantly feeling conscious about yourself, or the like, what are you wearing, like are your hair looking good, or is your skin okay, or like are your lips chapped or something like that, if you are conscious about those things, then you will not be able to establish that connection where you express the idea that you're confident enough to express the ideas that you have, right? So you need to understand that creating an eye contact with someone is an indication of the fact that you're confident enough to express your ideas. So like whoever you're talking to, sometimes like we can, and if you're not lying, if you are enthusiastic about what you're talking about, and if you're graceful in the way that you're presenting your speech, and if you're graceful in the way that you're communicating, I think then you can absolutely establish that eye contact with anyone. And I also think that you need to be like patient. Sometimes like we all have this anxiety, and all your doctors, so you all know like what anxiety feels like, maybe, or like looks like. Of course, you definitely know that. So it's like we all can feel anxious in positions where we're put in a spot where we have to talk about things that we might not be naturally confident about, right? So this is, like, very important to understand that if you can control your internal being, and if you can control your brain and not let your brain control you, you can have an efficient, like, speech. You can have a great eye contact, and you can have a like, smooth body language as well. So that's, if that answers your question. And of course, again, practice makes a man perfect. So the more you do it, the more you understand your audience, the more you understand that they don't care about the things that you're conscious about. They don't care about that. So to make a lasting impact, you should feel confident about the things that you have to express, or the things that you want to share with people. So if that answers your question, Dr. Zafa, and we're gonna go into, like, quickly go into this section, and I'm loving the fact that we all are making it an interactive session, because it is about communication, and I do see that we have more questions, so we're gonna get to those questions in just a bit. But I would like to share a few things with you all. So we have so why is it important that, or why do you want people to listen to you? So that's a question from me to you. So tell me, like, why do you want people to listen to you? So just drop those ideas in the chat while I, cover up the rest of the section. But let me know, like, why do you think that you are important enough that people should listen to you, not understand you, not agree with you, but to listen to you? So that's my question. So let me know, and I'm going to, keep on looking at the chat section as well. But I guess, like, just coming to the next points, that you have to make sure that when you're meeting with someone, sometimes we all are, like, low on energy. Sometimes we might not have the best of the energies that we usually have, but you still want to make sure, again, depending on your audience, that you're greeting them or you're meeting with them enthusiastically. That means that it's not like, you're jumping and going above and beyond, but it's just like, you're making the other person feel that they're welcomed, or you respect them enough to, like, actually greet them in a manner that they deserve, right? For example, like, if I see my best friend coming in, I'll probably give her a hug, and I will let her know that if I'm seeing her after a long time, then I'm going to let her know that I missed you, or something like that, right? If I'm meeting with my mentor, I will, like, greet her, and I will, probably give her a hug as well, but then also just, talk to her and ask her how she is, and my tone is going to change. But if I'm meeting with the senator, my tone is going to be different, right? My tone is going to be more, like, polite, of course, but then not super excited, but also, like, happy and, like, respectful, and also professional. So that's, like, definitely, like, so when you understand your audience, you want to change your tone, and you want to make sure that you're paying attention to those little things as well. And then we have the other thing that's very important. And I'm looking at the chat, and I'm seeing, like, yeah, believe what you believe. Yeah, sometimes, like, people want to communicate, or people want other people to listen to them because they want them to believe what we believe. And of course, like, that can come with its own set of problems, but then also, it's important as well. And of course, like, you're part of the story because you are important, and you want other people to know your story. That is very true, Dr. Batul. And so, but going to the important part that I've learned by, like, because I am also on the interview, like, the panel that interviews interns for the U.S. Senate. So for, like, any interns coming in, I interview them. So I go through their resumes, I go through this, and we get people from all across the United States. So, like, Ivy Leagues, and schools that are, like, in positions that are very important. So people want to intern with the U.S. Senate, right? With the U.S. Senator. So I go through that, and I see that, like, you connect with those people, you interview them, and you talk to them. And it's very important to understand this thing, that this is, like, one sort of, like, tool, I would say, or, like, an advice that I would like to give you all today, is that when you are talking to someone for the first time, remember that everyone loves it when you ask them questions, not about yourself, but about them, right? Not about just general situations, but about them. Like, oh, where are you from? Okay, how long have you been in this profession? What do you like about your profession the most? How did you end up working for this firm? How did you end up working for this, like, this doctor? How did you get your rotation? Or tell me more about it. Like, do you like working here? How is it? Is it exciting? Or, and all those things, all those questions. to understand the person better, but also to make them feel important, right? Because you want to establish that you respect them, and you can respect. And if you're meeting them for the first time, of course, like, like you might not be able to do a lot of actions to prove that, but you can, like use your words and to know them better. So if you have a mentor, or if you have a preceptor, right? A lot of you have preceptors, like when you're applying for your observerships and all those things. So sort of like, like try to, build that connection with them by asking questions about themselves, about them. So it's very important. And I think this was one skill that I also learned when my director pulled me aside, and she was like, you need to talk more. And it's not just how are you, a simple how are you need to talk more. And I was like, okay, what do I talk about? So I started asking questions about people, right? If we meet with delegates or politicians, I'm like, I have a, like a set of questions that I ask them. And you can also have the same thing. Like you can have a set of questions that you can ask people, and which would probably, like help you interact with them better. You don't always have to be very creative. That's, well, the other thing. And then also, I'm just going to run through these things real quick, because I do want you to understand this. And if you would like me to elaborate on it, I'd be happy to. And of course, yes, Dr. Namta, like to express our ideas, right? It's very important. And other people, I want you to be putting in the chat, because I only see a few people pretty active, but I want other people to, because we're getting to the end of the session. So just want to make sure that everyone has that opportunity. And then also just make sure that sometimes, like when we're talking about different things, there are two different set of, like, when you're expressing things, there can be a set of facts and there can be opinions. Sometimes people, like try to convert their opinions, and they want you to believe that their opinions are facts. And I think that's where, like, it's not a good speech. So you need to understand your audience again. So if I'm asking you for your opinion, that's great. Give me your opinion. But if we're talking about something where you are, like talking about facts, and you want to, you're listing down facts, that's a different speech. That's a different, like, like idea. But so we want to make sure that we are able to differentiate between facts and opinions, and we're not combining them together in order to exert something, or in order to implement, or like force someone into believing something, right? So that's something that makes your speech more effective, because then you are not talking about anything negative, you're not gossiping about things, and your speech is good and it has substance in it. And then I'm sure, like, then somebody like Dr. Aga would like to listen to you. So and also, like, be attentive.
तो
So
खत्म हो गया मम्मा ने क्या रखा
please
है
mute yourself.
देखा पीनी है पीनी है
All right, I think Dr. Aga, could you mute the participant? All right, and then also the other thing is that you want to be attentive, right? If you're attentive and you're listening to the person who's talking to you, I think that's very important, because if you do that, and then you're not constantly forming questions or answers in your head, that's, like very effective, because then you need to understand, or you need to trust that if you are going to get that opportunity, maybe not in that, like specific moment that you can express your ideas, but maybe later, right? But then if you do lose track of what the person was saying, that's just like not nice. And I think I do feel bad if I'm not paying attention to what the other person is saying, because if they're like super close to me, for example, and I'm not listening to what they're saying, there can be a point where they just like, oh, I remember I told you that, and I'm like, no, I don't remember. Or maybe in my head I'm like, oh my god, I missed that point. So we don't want that, right? We want to be attentive, we want to be good listeners. Again, understanding your audience, you don't have to be always a good listener, but if you can be in moments where you have to be, or you must be, then you should be. And then also your tone and your pitch of the voice really matters. There's a research where they showed that, so I'm going to come to that. I just saw a thing in the chat. Okay, so there was a research where they basically, sort of like research that people vote for politicians who have a deeper voice, because humans have a tendency of connecting deep voice with power. So, like that's where it comes to the fact that you don't always have to have like deep voice, right? I mean, it doesn't mean that you're going to have like a very thick voice. You don't have to have that. But what it means is that you have a pitch where it's comforting, but then also it's confident, and like it feels that you're confident, and also, like it's smooth. So you're not constantly thinking about the things that you want to say. Again, it comes from practice, but then also you want to make sure that you have a pitch or a tone that is stable, so you're not like shouting, and not you're not expressing your ideas in a very excited manner, and like you're not spitting out words that don't make sense. You're not using vocabulary that is wrong. You're just like you have that pitch and tone and that form of communication where the other person would like to listen to you, right? And then also the other thing is that if you have a deep voice, or if you have like a monotonous if you're speaking in a monotonous way, I think people pay more attention, because then they want to listen to you, right? Because then they're curious, like, what are you talking about? Because you're not shouting all the time. So that's like like the important thing. And then I'm gonna spend 2 more minutes on this part, and then we're gonna go to answering your questions, and then also like the other important things such as an interview, right? So there are like 2 parts, as Dr. Lagari mentioned at the beginning. There's verbal communication and there's non-verbal communication. So verbal communication is what I'm doing right now, and I can stop using my hands, which are my non-verbal communication, my my tools for non-verbal communication, or I can like turn off my video and there will be no expressions. But then also you need to understand that while your verbal communication is important, but your non-verbal communication is also important. If you're like standing somewhere, or if you're sitting somewhere and you're constantly moving your legs, or you're constantly moving your like you're touching your hands, or like you're just like acting, you're showing that you're super nervous and you're anxious, that's not an effective form of communication. You need to understand that when your body language also has to be confident, right? You have to display that you are confident, and that's like very important. So I think like so we're within verbal communication, we need to have like we need to understand that where speech should be coherent, which means that whatever we are saying like it should make sense, not in the form of its meaning, but also like the way that you're delivering it. And then also you need to understand your audience, which means that you need to know who you're talking to. Talking with your partner, like maybe your spouse or your sister, your mom, your dad, it's very different than talking to somebody who's your professional colleague, or like it's your patient or someone like that. And then also like your tone will vary from your audience to audience, so that's something that you need to understand. And then we have like facial communication, right? As we like one of you had a question about how, I think like it was Dr. Taha, I think, if I'm not mistaken, about like like the eye contact, right? It's very important. That comes under facial expressions. So expressions such as your eye contact are very important, because if you're looking everywhere but not the person that you're talking to, I think like that's very disrespectful sometimes. Like it shows that you don't have the energy to pay attention to what you're to pay attention to the person that you're talking to, or you were not interested in the conversation, I think. Because sometimes, most of the times, I think when I am talking to people who are not looking at me directly while they're speaking to me, I feel like they're not like interested in the conversation. That's just me and my bias. But and then like sometimes you need to smile, and it doesn't have to like be a whole smile, but you need to be like kind enough to make the other person realize that you're there, you're you're understanding. And it also, you should not always smile. Like it has to be you need to understand what like where it's appropriate to smile. And then also if you do use your hands a lot for like to communicate, like me, because I use my hands a lot, so make sure they're like a teeny tiny tip, and it's for the men in this session as well, that make sure that your nails, if you have like if they're not manicured, then they're like clean. They're like like you've cut them, and you've moisturized your hands. If you're shaking hands with people constantly, that's also a form of communication, right? So you have like like your hands moisturized and all those things, but it is very important. So those are things that we sometimes don't think that they're important, but I do think that they're important with the amount of experience that I have in this world of like just communication, because I think 95% of the work that I do is communication. So I think, and then so this is like what is very important. And so these are the pointers that I wanted to share. So before going to the questions that I have, I would like to request Dr. Lagari, because I am not logged in from my phone, to please drop in my LinkedIn ID in the chat, if you can. And so if you guys so the opportunity that I wanted to give you all was that drop in the chat. We're gonna take like 30 seconds for this, but drop in the chat how many of you think that you would be appearing for a potential interview. It can be a visa interview, it can be your match interview, it can be an internship interview, or it can be a job interview in the next 6 months or a year. Can you like drop in, just like say yes if you are. So we're gonna take like 30 seconds for that. All right, we have 3. All right, okay. All right. Tomorrow, wow, okay, Dr. Tala. Where are you going? Are you going for an internship interview or a job interview? Okay, match. That's great. All right, good luck. That's great. That's great. All right. So a lot of people are, going to appear for an interview in the next 6 months or a year. That's great. So, Dr. Lagari, can you hear me? All right. So if you can put in the or maybe like Sana can do that too. So if you guys can if you can put in the LinkedIn link to the chat. So if you are appearing for an interview and if you would like me to do a mock interview with you, I'd be more than happy to do that. I do have a company named as Gradfolio. So what we do is like we help students get undergrad and grad admissions in the US. We're partnered with 175 schools, but then part of it is that we prepare them for visa interviews, right? And then also like from the experience that I have in terms of internship interviews and all those things, so I can give you tips, or maybe we can do more practice, and we can do a mock interview, and if we need more we can do more. Of course, you would have to schedule that. But my name is Fariha Sahar, and if you do search me up, you should be able to find my LinkedIn ID, so we can connect there if you have any questions. I'm based in the US, Virginia. So if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to do that. But if you want to do a mock interview with me, let me know, and we can schedule that, and we can do it, and I can give you tips on how to give better answers, because there are like two ways of answering everything, right? There are several ways of answering different things, right? If somebody asks you where are you going, what are you going to do, you can tell them that, hey, I'm going to California for an internship. Or you can tell them that I'm going to California for an internship because I was selected out of 1,800 applicants and I have received this great scholarship, and here's the form and all those things. So that's important. So just reach out to me if you would like me to give you any tips, or just just if you just want to connect. And if you can search me there, and you can I Dr. Aga, can you search me up and drop my LinkedIn ID here?
Sure.
Yeah, thank you very much. Oh yeah, I'm yeah, absolutely. Please do, Dr. Talha, if you need any help with that. But okay, we have like 3 more minutes. If you have any questions, please do, Dr. Aga. Please search me up and add the link here to the chat so that people can connect on LinkedIn, and just shoot me a text, and I'd be more than happy to connect. And thank you so much all for joining this session, and thank you so much, Dr. Lagari and Dr. Aga, for hosting it and for making sure that people can have access to different resources. So thank you so much, everyone. Can you just follow me there, or send me a message, and then I'll send you a connection request. Okay, Sana has dropped it in. Thank you, Sana. All right, everyone. Thank you very much. Looking forward to connecting with you over LinkedIn. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to Dr. Agar, Dr. Lagari, and they might be able to connect you with me. And then also I'll just drop in my email address just in case you guys aren't able to. All right. Thank you so much. You have a nice day. I guess evening there in Pakistan. But all right. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your insight and helping the candidates for mock interviews. And there are a few questions in the chat box, but we have a limited time. So I will ask only one question.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there is a question from Dr. Kumar, and he wanted to ask that how to break the ice with someone like head of department or senior professor in a new workplace, like hospital or while doing observerships.
I think it's just like, you need to take that opportunity. For example, if you're meeting them for the first time, ask them about, if you're interning or observing or if you're working in New York, for example, there's so many food options there. I think like everyone's favorite topic is food because everyone, like even if you're not a foodie, we all appreciate good food. So you can ask them like, hey, like what's your favorite place to eat food? And then you can just, like build upon that conversation depending on how, like friendly you are, how funny you are, what sort of humor you have. But if you can, like do that and then just like ask them that question, and then eventually you can be like, would you like to join me for lunch or dinner or like something like that? They might say yes or they may say no. So and then like you can build that connection. I would say, I guess like like it just like takes a simple question like just ask them questions about their like experience, their like work experience maybe, or like how's their day going. That's also like a question that sometimes I use. I was like, how was your day? And then somebody can, because sometimes people are very honest and they're like, oh, my day was like terrible. And sometimes people are very, like casual or like formal about it. And they're like, I had a good day, even though they were having the worst day of their life. So they're just like, like that's how I would say we can approach this.
So thank you so much. I think we are done with today's time. So to conclude the session, I wanted to thank you all for joining this session on the art of verbal communication. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you here, and I hope that you found this session valuable, inspiring, and motivating. And a big thank you to our speaker, Ms. Faria Sahar, for sharing her insights and expertise and all of your active participation and engagement. Let's continue striving to communicate with clarity, empathy, and purpose. Wishing you all the best, and I hope to see you in our next session.